Hey, Jimmy Murphy here from Boston Hockey Now, and I'm joined by Colby. Do we pronounce it Guy?
Yep, it's
All right.
pronounced Guy.
Doing a little Guy Lafleur, or I don't know what's going on there. Colby Guy here from Florida Hockey Now, joining me to tee up the Bruins-Panthers first-round series, which all of a sudden does not look like such a lock for the Boston Bruins, the heavily favored Boston Bruins, who won the President's Trophy like the Panthers did last year and are hoping to avoid the same fate that the Panthers had last year and the fate of most President's Trophy winners. But yeah, I mean, I did my predictions a couple days ago, Colby, and I usually am not that gung-ho about first rounds. I always feel like it's the toughest round. And I've picked the last, I don't know how many times the Bruins have gone to the playoffs. I've picked them to either win or lose in 7 games in the first round. It's just, they have a knack for doing it. They did 7 games 3 times with Toronto. Of course, they did 7 games last year with the Carolina Hurricanes. So it's always a tough, but there was just, you look at this team right now and with the season they had, and even when they were in a situation, we'll get to it in a bit here, like they're going to be in tonight, most likely, they still stepped up and dominated. And it's like every time you would think, all right, this is where they're going to hit a wall. This is where they're going to stop. This is where they're going to come back down to earth. They never did. And so I ended up going, yes, Vincent, we know that the Bruins have the stomach bug. We will get to that in a bit, but I was at the game day skate, so well aware of it. Appreciate it, though. It's one of those things where I just said, yeah, the Panthers don't have a chance. Anthony Mass saying Panthers. Well, he said Panthers in 5, and now he's saying in 4. Apparently, what's going on with Anthony right now when he's making these predictions is I think that he ate an edible, and it's gradually setting in, and now it's hit its peak, and he's picking the Panthers in 4. Anthony, come on, bud.
What I think is he saw the comment about the stomach bug, and he was like, oh, it's not going to be 5 anymore. It's going to be 4. Yeah. Maybe that's what the thought process is.
So anyhow, that's why I picked, and hey, it's already out there. I can't change it. I will say, though, if I could, I'm not the type to do it, but if I was, I would change this in a heartbeat right now, and I might even bet it on one of the wonderful betting apps we have now here in Massachusetts. I might actually bet this series to go 6 or 7 based on the information we were given today and the information I'm being told from behind the scenes. Let's get right into it. Jim Montgomery and Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, the whole team for the last, week or so have been using the words precautionary when a guy would miss a game, or when Patrice Bergeron left early, or when Linus Ullmark left early. But now we come to find out that this stomach bug has ripped through this Bruins dressing room. Montgomery told us today that Jacob Lauko had it last week, and that he lost 9 pounds from this bug. So this is pretty serious. 2 edibles. I wish I could join you right now, Anthony. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding the Boston Bruins right now as we go into this series. And all of a sudden, it's not looking like such a short thing. I'll give you the updates now. We were told that both Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman are questionable to be ready to go. So that would explain, as I just tweeted, why they called up Brandon Bussi on emergency recall from Providence. And also, and a lot of us were wondering what the hell was going on at practice yesterday, Colby. And I don't know if you saw my tweet just now, but the Bruins were giving a full practice to their E-Bug. He's a local state trooper. And former Bruin Bob Beers, who does color now on the radio for 98.5 The Sports Hub up here, he recognized right away who it was. I forget his name. Of course, I should have wrote it down. But he said, yeah, that guy's he's the E-Bug. He comes in and plays with the alumni team sometimes. I said, well, why is he out there taking in a full practice the day before the Stanley Cup Playoffs are about to begin? And we had no answer. Well, now we do. Because I'm telling you, I will not be the least bit surprised if I show up at TD Garden tonight and we're alerted to the fact that Brandon Bussi is starting, Jeremy Swayman is backing up, but he's not backed up at all, if you know what I mean, down below. He's wishing he was. He's probably loading up on Imodium, and he might not be able to go. So they're going to need that E-Bug. And we could see, I'm telling you, we could see a huge story. I don't know who the last E-Bug was to jump into a Stanley Cup playoffs in the first game of the playoffs, if there ever was one, but don't be surprised if that happens tonight. This is a mess right now for the Bruins. And on top of that, Patrice Bergeron is suffering from this illness, and he's got an upper body injury. Derek Forbort, they said, is going to be a go. But there's a lot of question marks right now. And I don't know if I'm Panthers fans, if I'm the Florida Panthers, I'm starting to salivate a bit at saying we could come in here and steal one at least tonight in split in Boston, Colby. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about the stomach bug, too, is that Sergei Bobrovsky was kept out of the lineup with something similar, and he wasn't even able to practice or at least back up Alex Lyon for about a week or two after he got the illness. And
okay.
I mean, talking to Paul Maurice about Bobrovsky's condition, he wasn't good enough to go for about a week. So that's where the whole Alex Lyon story even started, was because he was dealing with the same stomach bug, and that's where Alex Lyon got the opportunity to go and run with it. So if you have multiple guys dealing with that kind of thing where, I mean, they obviously can't go being the way they are. If it was that bad to the point where Bobrovsky had to be kept out for the last, I'd say 5 games before he started backing up Alex Lyon for the last 3, where the Panthers were really in a playoff race, I think that's something to be very concerned about.
I'll tell you, Colby, I think it is something to be concerned about. And the Bruins can downplay it all they want, and they can preach about their depth. And, you know, Jim Montgomery cited the game in Carolina down the stretch there where they were missing a Marchand, they were missing Bergeron and Krejci and all these guys. And, you know, Pasta and McAvoy stepped up and led the way, and power to them. You know, and that was a meaningful game because Carolina was still fighting for their division crown. So it wasn't like, you know, some pushover game. But then they cite the Philly game where, you know, they got the wins record. And I'm like, you can't put a late season game against a lottery team, all right, that your depth stepped up in that game and say, well, because of that, our depth will step up now in the playoffs. It's just a whole nother season. And you can't have it both ways when you tell us that all the time. And that's all they keep saying. Well, this is a new season. Yeah, well, it is a new season. And you can be the deepest team in the NHL, but if all of a sudden 48 hours within puck drop on the Stanley Cup playoffs, you know, a 5th or a 10th of your lineup, including your goalies, is just blown to pieces and thrown out, that's a problem. I don't care how deep you are. And this is going to be a real issue, I think, for the Bruins. It's like you say, this is no joke, this bug. It's not just like, oh, I threw up a couple times and I move on. I mean, I'm talking to people right now. Some of my friends are texting me saying, yeah, I had this thing. And I was on my back for like 5 days straight, you know, except for when I leaned up to throw up. So this is not good. It's going to be very interesting, but I'm telling you, for you bettors out there, jump on the Panthers for game 1. What do you have to lose? You're going to still get great odds right now, and do it now before we figure out who's in the lineup. But jump on the Panthers for game 1. Heck, even jump on them for the first period. Take the money line in the first period. I'm looking at it right now. They're plus 200. Why not? I think the Panthers can come in here right now and take game 1, Colby.
Yeah, and then, I mean, there was a stretch where the Panthers had a lot of their lineup out, and it started when Alexander Barkov got pneumonia and a couple other guys picked up the flu or something like that. And there was something going around the locker room. I think at that point, I even got sick at one stretch of time after interacting with some of these guys. It was so bad. But from November 15th up until the Christmas break on December 23rd, they went 7-10-3 while dealing with all of this. And they had a -7 goal differential. And I mean, when you look at that team, you had guys leaving the lineup, coming back. And I mean, in Barkov's case, he had several stints where he was in and out, trying to figure out what was going on with him. And then right after that, you had where he got injured as well. So, I mean, there were multiple different factors down that stretch. But, I mean, when you have guys not playing at not 100%, and then they also had a lot of their AHL lineup playing, I mean, that's where you got concerned about the Panthers. Like, are these guys as good as they were? But, I mean, a lot of them were playing while sick. And that's going to do something as far as your stamina goes and your ability to keep up with guys. So, I think that's something to watch with the Bruins as well, as far as how well they are with skating and conditioning in this game. If some of these guys do end up playing while they're sick, I think that's still going to be a factor.
Yeah, look, that's a great point by you. And it just happens that they're playing one of the fastest teams and one of the teams with the best transitions in the NHL. I mean, that's the bread and butter, right, of the Florida Panthers is their transition game and how well they can attack and just turn that play around. We'll get to Alex Lyon in a little, but for our Bruins viewers and listeners out there right now, Colby, who haven't really been paying attention that much to the Panthers because they've been, sucked up in their own joy of their President's Trophy record-breaking team. It's understandable. Give us some insight as to what turned things around for the Florida Panthers, and when, in your eyes, did it start to happen?
I mean, it felt like after that game to cap off the All-Star break where you had the Barkov tying it with about 3 seconds to go, Barkov assisting on the overtime winner. And that one set up Barkov to go on an incredible run for the rest of the season. Barkov had 31 points in 26 games to wrap up the season, and it really felt like he was back. But, I mean, he was also dealing with the injuries and the illnesses to begin the season, so that's kind of where he was struggling, and you get Barkov healthy. It's felt like Ekblad's kind of rounded a corner there. She was slowly getting better after dealing with several injuries, and he ended the season up until they clinched the playoff spot. He had 8 points in 7 games, and his defensive game has overall rounded back into what you'd expect Aaron Ekblad to be. So you look at those two guys kind of returning to form after a rough start of the season as far as injuries go, and then their play is kind of hampered because of it. I think those are two very big reasons, but I mean, the biggest reason has to be Matthew Tkachuk. He's always been a guy that's performed great in the late game situations, and he finished the season with 40 goals, 109 points. He had 7 points in the team's last 5 games, and that's a guy that you'd expect to step up during the playoffs as well. And I mean, they've had a lot of contribution up and down the lineup as well. You have Carter Verhaeghe with 40 goals, Brandon Montour with a really big breakout season with 70 points. So they have the guys who really stepped up down the stretch, and they went 18, 10, and 2 after that Boston game. That kind of flipped the switch for them. So I think that's kind of where everything changed for the Panthers.
Yeah, and look, as I was saying earlier there, Colby, when I talked about, I was always waiting for that moment for the other shoe to drop for the Bruins. That was a moment too. I remember looking at a friend and saying, look, this could be that game that kind of really brings them back down to earth, because they had that game, the Bruins, and all of a sudden the Panthers just snatched it from them. So that was another game where I thought maybe the Bruins would start to turn the other way just a bit. They didn't. But yeah, I when I remember that game well, and I said, hey, maybe the Panthers have finally found themselves. And, as you're saying now, it looks like that was definitely a pivotal moment, gave them a lot more belief in themselves. I want to talk to you about Paul Maurice. And I want to go back, whether it was it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? They're in Toronto, I believe, and he absolutely loses his mind on the bench. This is Paul Maurice, who I've covered this guy. I've done plenty of playoff series when he was with Carolina or when he was with Toronto. I've covered him and interviewed him plenty of times, one-on-one or in a scrum. Always one of the most calm, mild-mannered guys and well-calculated guys that I've covered as a coach. So that, to me, I was like, whoa. I was really surprised to see that. And it worked, though. And I said, that could go the wrong way, because that's not really him. And I don't know how that team's going to react. But am I wrong to say that outburst and that, enough of your BS, stop playing like, what do you say? You're playing like a bunch of effing what?
He
Babies?
always said about that ordeal there was that he said a lot of swear words. So I'm sure we can.
Sorry, what was it? It was on the video. I mean, they had it on. I was watching on TSN, and you could see they were showing him mouth it and like,
it's either a P or a B there. That's
yeah. We'll go with the B to be polite. You're playing like a bunch of bleeping babies, and it worked. I mean, am I right to think that had an effect on this team and motivated them?
Yeah, I mean, you look at everything that was boiling down that night. You had Keith Tkachuk coming out and calling the team soft, and then they come out that game and they they don't have the best first couple of periods there, and they're kind of chasing it. And I mean, even I'm sitting there writing something about the season being over and how Keith Kachuk was right. And then all of a sudden you have that last minute goal by Sam Reinhart that tied the game and got things started. But I think just right after that moment was kind of where it could have resonated for them as well. And that kick started the 6-game winning streak. That got them in. Alex Lyon was also in net for that game as well as the Bruins game. So I feel like both of those moments kind of really tied Alex Lyon into the team. And the team just plays harder for Alex. And I'm sure the Boston game has more to do with that. We'll get to that when we talk about Lyon. But
well, let's
I
talk
feel
about
like
it now.
what
Yeah, I said let's segue into him right now. I mean, is it what we see from? Are they going to ride him till he falters, or is this going to be something where once they feel confident enough that Bobrovsky's ready, they'll put him back in? Or is Bobrovsky ready right now and they're just riding a hot hand? What is it?
Bobrovsky's been ready since game 79 of the season, but they've been riding Alex Lyon because he's been playing so well. I mean, they've always known he has the capability of making those big saves, but when you look at his first stint with the team that ended with that Boston game, he was a little finicky. Sometimes he got caught out of position, and he was kind of battling it in there. And that Boston game was really where he kind of settled down and connected the dots between playing a structured game, yet still being able to battle and get those big saves. So you look at the second stint where he has the film, he's able to kind of be a bit more comfortable with himself. And he said that, where he's able to find the play style that worked for him, because he's an experienced type of guy and he needs to have those learning moments. And that Boston game for him was kind of where it clicked. So he goes into that second stint feeling comfortable and playing this style of game where he is structurally sound and he makes the big saves. And I mean, you look at his numbers here to end the season, he was 6-1-1 with a 943 save percentage and a 187 goals against average. I mean, he's just a confident guy playing good hockey, and he's making big saves.
Well, you know what this reminds me of, and you're old enough to remember it. It reminds me of the Hamburger, Andrew Hammond, and that run he had. What was it, 2013 with the Ottawa Senators, where he's their fourth-string guy or whatever, comes in from the AHL or ECHL, wherever he may have been there, and he takes him on that run. And it was really an amazing run, but Cinderella's shoe got lost there. The run ran out in the playoffs. Do you think against even let's face it, even a banged up Boston Bruins team is better than at least I'd say 65% of the teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now? Can Alex Lyon continue it in this whole other world? This isn't the regular season. I know he's been playing playoff type atmospheres coming down the stretch. Credit to him. But can he keep this going right now, Colby?
I feel like he can. I mean, if you look at his track record in the AHL as well, he won the Calder Cup with the Chicago Wolves last year, which I know that's a completely different world, but he's lived up to that kind of pressure before. He's played in an AHL game where he stopped 95 shots in a 5 overtime game. So, I mean, he's lived it before, and he's feeling confident. So I think he will be able to continue that. It's just a matter if the team in front of him is able to keep up with the Bruins to the point where maybe they give up a few too many good chances there, and they get some on him and it weighs his confidence a little bit. But I think if the team in front of him keeps playing well, I think he'll do a good job in the playoffs.
Yeah, and shout out to our man Mark Allard watching right now. I look at it too. I was just going to say that was going to be my next question. So beautiful segue there. How about this Panthers blue line? Because that could probably dictate, even if Lyon keeps playing this way, if that blue line doesn't play at a whole nother level, then they're maybe capable of defensively. They're great defense offensively, but can they play at the level they need to defensively in this series?
I think with Aaron Ekblad coming back to form, I think it's a little bit harder of a question than it would have been because, I mean, when you look at the way the defense was playing in November, December versus now, it was a lot leakier. They were giving up shots from places where the goaltending wasn't necessarily getting to them. But I think when you look at the amount of goals this team has given up, I think it's also been because of leaky goaltending, because Sergei Bobrovsky hasn't been up to his standard this year. And then you've had games where they've put Spencer Knight in situations where the guy is still healing from something and he's a bit off, and all of a sudden you get a barn burner there. But I think if you have Alex Lyon playing the standard and the guys playing the way they have over the last few games, I don't see why not. I mean, when you look at a guy like Gus Forsling, he's been one of their most reliable guys that doesn't get talked about enough. He's very fast, gets up and down the ice fast, and I mean, you think somebody gets by the defense, and he's right there making the play. And that's the guy they have right next to Ekblad, who, I mean, still has lost a step this season. So I think that's going to help. And then you have an underrated guy in Mark Stahl, who, albeit he got a lot of flack for making some mistakes early in the season, but when you look at some of his tape down the line, he's a guy that's out there blocking shots, making the big play, and that's really freed up Brandon Montour to be that 70-point guy because he has the trust to go up there, and Montour also has had the ability to get back because of his skating ability. So that top four, I don't think is that bad, although Mark Stahl maybe is a guy that would operate better on top 6 minutes rather than top four. And then that bottom pairing's been solid as well. So I
Mark
think
Stahl's, he's a guy who's built for the playoffs. I mean, that's a playoff type defenseman, one of those, like a Derek Forbort on the Bruins. You know what I mean? But good point by you. You know, Forbort's in the third pairing, not the second. So, you know, is he going to be playing above his capabilities? And, you know, you mentioned Brandon Montour there, and you know why he had such a great season. I mean, we'll give Stahl a little credit, but you know why he was so great, right?
yeah, he got the opportunity to quarterback that power play, and
No, Colby. It's because he went to my school. He's a UMass alum. That's why UMass Amherst. I mean, that's the plain and simple of it. There, okay. He was a Minuteman. That explains it right there. I'm just kidding you, but yeah. He's had a great season. Jim Montgomery had a lot of praise for him. Funny too. I want to go back to Lyon. Montgomery said the other day that he actually coached against Lyon in the USHL when he was with Dubuque and Lyon was with Omaha. And he said he thought at that time that Lyon was the best goalie in the USHL. So he said, look, he's taken a long way to get to where he is, but he thought, hey, this guy has got the goods. So we've seen it plenty of times, right? I mean, look back to Tim Thomas, what the mission and the roads and twists and turns he had to take to get where he went. So it's a great story. We'll see what happens. As far as the Bruins go, guys, I don't know what that lineup's going to look like. You know, that's how we started the show, and that's how we ended here. I don't have answers for you right now, and it's a great point by Mark right now saying the Bruins power play has been iffy to say the least, but how do they right the ship against a Panthers team who's close to the bottom of the league on the PK? Well, that's good news, I guess, for the Bruins, but what is that power play going to look like tonight? What's that top power play unit going to be like? I'm guessing, I mean, if you asked me right now, put a gun to my head or put me on the spot and said, is Patrice Bergeron playing tonight? I say no. That's my gut feeling. And we'll see how the team reacts. They've done it before, but it's a different element now when it's in the playoffs. So on that note, let's get your predictions we'll take a prediction for this game, and I'll take a prediction for the series from you. And then we'll look a little further down the road, and I'll get your cup prediction as well, Colby. So go for it.
all right, so I think the Panthers win this game 3-1 just because you have a Boston team that is struggling with injuries and illnesses, and maybe it's going to be a bit much pressure coming out of the gate as well with the Boston Marathon going on this morning and all the craziness going on in Boston. So I think the Panthers take this one 3-1, and I honestly think Colin White scores a goal tonight. He's a Boston kid.
Yep.
When you look at his numbers against Boston, he has a goal and an assist in 3 games, where he has 8 goals and 7 assists the entire season. So I think he'll come to play in this one. This one means something to him. I think he'll score. Panthers win 3-1 tonight.
You know, interesting thing before you go on there for the series, Colin White is a guy I know for a fact that Don Sweeney wanted to acquire or sign along the way. He's always targeted him as a player he wanted in Boston because he saw a lot of him here when he played around here. So interesting you bring that up. But go ahead. So what do you like in the series?
I think Boston still takes this one in 6.
In 6, okay. And then who's your Cup final teams and who wins it all?
You know, before the season, I predicted that the Oilers would beat the Rangers in the Stanley Cup final. And you look at the way the Oilers played down the stretch and the way that Matthias Ekholm has really changed their defense. I think I'm going to stick with that, given the amount of depth the Rangers acquired at the deadline and the way the Oilers are now. I think I'm just going to stick with my guns and say Oilers over Rangers.
All right, sticking with it. So I had I can't obviously remember. I think I had the Rangers over the Avalanche in the final. So I'm with you. I mean, I like the Rangers' chances. I don't think the Devils are ready. I like the Rangers in 7 in that series. But I'm gonna go with what I said the other day. Boston Bruins in a rematch in 1988 and 1990 when I was growing up, and all the heartbreak that sort of Peter bleeping Klima brought to Bruins fans. They get a little revenge 30-something years down the road here, and the Bruins take it over Connor McDavid and the Oilers in the final. As far as the series goes, I said I'm on record as sweeping, but I'm going to go right now when we get off. Maybe not at Caesars since they just robbed me of $500. I'm going to have to deal with that in a bit. But I might up the ante a bit. I might go with a 6 or 7 game series here. I think the Panthers, given what might happen tonight, and I'm with you, I think this is the Panthers game to win. If this is the one. And, people keep saying, that the Garden's going to be rocking and, all the marathon, it's big Boston Sports Day. Well, if the Garden is full of people that have been partying since 9 a.m., by the time they get to the Garden, well, they might not even make it, first of all. They might go home and pass out. But by the time they get to the Garden, I think they're going to be pretty zonked. So I've noticed on these game ones on Marathon Mondays, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'd be willing to bet that the last 3 to 4 Marathon Monday games that the Bruins have played in the playoffs, they've lost. We'll have to go check it out. So I think this is the Panthers game to win. If the Bruins win it, then maybe we're looking at the sweep. But if not, maybe the Panthers can force it to 6. We'll see what happens. Colby, tell everybody they can get your stuff at Florida Hockey Now, right?
Yeah, you can get my stuff at Florida Hockey Now. You can follow me on Twitter at Colby Guy.
All right, Colby Guy from Florida Hockey Now. I'm Jimmy Murphy from Boston Hockey Now. Happy Stanley Cup playoffs, and we'll do a couple more of these during the series if it isn't too fast of a series. All right, Colby?
Sounds good.
All right, bud. That's Colby Guy. I'm Jimmy Murphy. We'll talk to you down the line.